Alright, hey guys, I'm going to be demonstrating how I paint some of my 3D printers. This is one that I've just not long printed. It's a couple of weeks ago. Finally got around to doing a video to show you guys the process I go through to paint these suckers up. Now the first thing we're going to do is give it a white coating of this gesso. It just helps to bring out the colours rather than just using the black. So it's a bit of a layering process. So the first thing I'm going to do is to squirt some of this stuff somewhere. I might use that. I do have a little pan here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start painting. This brush here, and we're just going to layer it. But what you want to do is not make it too thick, because if you put it on too thick, it covers up all the little details. But in some areas, you might want to conceal some of the imperfections on the plastic. But we're just going to go ahead and paint all over Groot's head. You just don't want to put too much on at once, because if you put too much on, it doesn't tend to, well, it dries really fast, and so what you end up with is it goes a bit gluggy, and then you don't get the same result. But what this does is it kind of adds as like a base layer, you know, a bit of a primer. You could just go ahead and skip this step and you can just paint straight on with your acrylic paints, but I just find just giving this little bit of an extra layer, it allows the preceding layers to actually stick and bind a little bit better, so you end up with a much better painted result at the end when it's all said and done. There's plenty of people out there have been doing this a lot longer than me, probably have some better ideas, but this is just some of the tips that I've picked up on painting a few of these myself. Yeah, this first layer of this gesso stuff doesn't have to be perfect. You can also generally buy this stuff just at your local arts and crafts suppliers, or there's sometimes the cheapy shops, the $2 shops, they sell them as well. And it doesn't matter if it's not completely covered, particularly this sort of when we're painting a Groot model, because we do want a bit of that texture still to pop out through. But the next layer, oddly enough, is going to be, I also do this once this dries, which it does dry very fast, this stuff, which is another reason why you don't want to put too much on at once. So you can see some of those little, otherwise you cover up too much detail if you're trying to go too thick too fast. This gesso stuff is also a little bit harsh on brushes, so just be conscious of that. This is actually one of my favorite brushes for this sort of stuff. I probably normally wouldn't use it for with the gesso, but hey, look, make sure you do the underneath as well. I'm probably going through this a little bit faster than I normally would. I don't know why, I feel like I'm holding you guys up, even though when I do edit this video, it's going to be sped through some of this stuff. And you can already see, like, these faces pretty much dry already. And this particular model print, I just got that from Thingiverse. There's plenty of options out there for free printing. Alright, so that's more or less. Dab, 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 dab. Just going to fill in, just going to make sure it's, we don't want that too thick in some of those places, so just Little dab, 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 dabs. Little dab, dabs. Dab, 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 dab. Just to spread it out a little bit. Hope you guys can hear the bird songs in the distance there. I do get a few birds around here. All right, so that's looking pretty good. So it's not necessarily a coverall, it's just to give it that little bit of extra texture, a little bit of a seal. It helps the acrylic paint stick to it better. I mean, I've done it both with and without this stuff, but I just find first layer, use the gesso. It's kind of almost like a glue, so you just got to be careful. But yeah, so what I'm going to do, normally I'd probably do this before I start painting, but I'm just going to tidy up just some of these edges as well, just to make sure. I just noticed just in that printing stage there's still a little bit of plastic, so there he is so far. Alright, welcome back. So for this next stage I'm just going to paint this black. Now I know it seems a bit of counterproductive because it was black and then I made it white and then I'm going to make it black again, but the reason being is it starts out black plastic. We'll do the gesso, which gives it kind of a seal, a bit of a primer, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually start the acrylic painting process. So for this step I'm going to use this black Mars Black paint. Just got it from the local $2 shop. So we'll just squirt a little bit there. That's probably a little bit too much, but that's okay. And I'm going to use my same brush. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do pretty much the same as what we just did with the gesso. We just don't want to have it too thick. You can put a tiny little bit of water on if you want to thin it out. And just go over that same spot that you've just done just a few times, just to kind of, I just find this like evens it out a little bit. Now this black is what will help the top layers really pop a little bit. So it's all about layering in this process. So we want to just kind of build it up. Now the rest of this following stage is actually pretty quick, mainly because this paint dries very, very fast, particularly in the climate I'm in, even though it's coming into winter here. So it's a little bit cooler, but it's not exactly cold. We still have fairly high humidity. On this coat I want to make sure it's as fairly even as possible. You can also do this on the on an airbrush if you choose, which I have done sometimes. I just like the enjoyment of just sitting down and painting and taking my time and just, you know, observing and looking at it in detail. The airbrush is good as well for that. Some of the detailing, sometimes I'll use an airbrush. Most of the time though, I prefer just to get out the old trusty paintbrush and paints and just paint away. Alright, that's a pretty much completely black Groot. And we'll just give that probably 10 minutes or so, and then once he's dry, we'll come back and we'll do the next layer, which is going to be and that this is where you can get a little bit creative. This is where, don't be afraid to get creative with your colors. Experiment a little bit, and you know, worst case is if you completely mess it up and it's not exactly how you like it, then just go back, paint it black again, or whatever your base colour is, and start again. Which, yeah, it's all part of the fun. It's all part of the process. Okay, welcome back. Now, just to point out that it's not the perfect print. 3D print, it got a few imperfections there. A little bit of moisture in my filament, and it's probably a little bit old, but it still, I think, came out alright. And for the purpose of what we're doing here today, it's still going to come out quite well. We're just looking at some painting techniques. So what I've got here prepared is, this is a little bit of paper towel that I've dampened up. It's probably a little bit too moist, but not too bad. So we just want it kind of wet, and what that does is it just keeps the paint a little bit fresher, particularly for this next step, because there's going to be a little bit involved. We're going to be mixing some colours. I may not get it right the first time of how we want to have it, but we're going to see what we come up with. So basically what we're going to be doing is layering. We've got the black, and the next one's going to be a darker brown for the more tree kind of looking colour, but rather than just using a flat colour, we could just use one brown, for example. I'm going to mix it up a little bit, so just over in this corner I'm going to have a little bit of that, and then I'm going to go for which is a burnt sienna on that one, and then I'm going to put in a little bit of this this one here, which I quite like, which is the raw sienna. It's just a bit of a lighter colour. Okay, and then I'm going to go for a bit of earth brown. Which is very similar to that burnt sienna, but slightly different. I'm going to stick, for now, a little bit of this mustardy colour, which is a yellow ochre, which you notice they're very similar tones, and then I'm just going to stick a bit of white over here just in case, so I probably will use that as well. It's going to just do a little bit of a mix. Over here, so for this next coat, if you like, I do want a slightly darker brown. But once again, in this next step, we don't want to go on too thick. We actually want to do a bit of a dry brushing technique. So now that I've got my colour mixed, I'm just going to, on this other little piece of paper towel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to pretty much run out the brush till it's got not much paint left on it. And then we just want to lightly kind of go over the surface of the print. You see how that's still putting paint down. Just remember, this is a layering process. It does take some time to build it up. Okay, that's the next layer. pretty much done. It's a bit hard to see probably in that light because it is such a dark brown. Now for this next bit, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to give it that, these two here, and a tiny little bit of white. So what I've got is this more mustard colour, and we're going to do a similar thing, but only lighter. Still got a bit too much on my brush. I'm just going to try and do some highlights. So I'm just kind of flicking my brush. Don't want to put too much pressure on there. And see how that's like just catching the top. It's just catching the top of the surface to give it the highlights. Oops. Okay, starting to take shape now. This next one, I'm going to go a little bit lighter again, but keeping the same base. So I'm just going to mix in a little bit of white. And then a little bit of this yellow ochre. If you can see that colour. And so what we want to do here, and the idea here is just to give it A little bit of a weather look, and you can see how I'm just like rubbing it in every now and again when I put a bit too much on. It kind of gives it that, you know, that real tree look. And what you want is all the little bumps to kind of highlight slightly differently to your other layers. And a tiny little bit of paint goes a hell of a long way. So it's coming along, it's taking shape. That's the next phase. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we need a green colour. I don't actually have any green paint, but I'm going to use a bit of this smoky grey and some of this yellow cadmium, and then we'll see what that mixes up to. Yeah, that's a bit of a, it's kind of an olivey green that's made. But I might just put in just a tad of standard blue. Whoop, that's a bit too much. Maybe not. It's kind of aqua kind of. It's starting to kind of go more towards what we're. Just got a bit of that white in that's right next to it. Okay. Well, this is just going to be a test anyway. We'll see what that's like. I just want to get rid of some of that excess. Okay, so what we want to do is we just want to give a bit of a hint of green on this. Let's see if we can do a slight different colour as well. Let's mix those into the mix. Maybe a bit more yellow. Okay, so this final step, I'm going to mix in a bit of this medium gel gloss with a bit of black. And I'm just going to get my paintbrush a little bit wet. Give it a good mix. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let's just do these eyeballs here. And there we have it. The finished product. Now I might give it a coat of gloss once that's all dried to seal it in, but otherwise, hope you've enjoyed watching me paint. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.